Hey guys, it's Jason with Rising Bagel, and I said I would do a video every week, but I just kind of fell off that. But today's video, I want to do an IT video because I do IT. I do networking. I do wireless and security, firewalls, phone systems, primarily Cisco systems. But you know, I'm technologically agnostic. So to me, like a router is a router, and a switch is a switch. Wireless is wireless. Everything's mostly open source, but there are some things that are proprietary, right? Like Cisco's EIGRP, or proprietary software that another company uses. Well, what I want to talk about is the 5 things that you can do when you are troubleshooting in IT, when there's an issue and something is broken. Okay, so it's a lot different than working on a project. It's a lot. You got to be, you got to be quick on your feet. You got to think. You got to. Also, you have to think about how many users are affected. How many users are affected? What's the temperature of the client? Are we looking to temporarily fix a problem? Are we looking to fix the problem all the way? Are we willing to risk more downtime while we look at the problem? There's a lot of things that you need to ask yourself while you're troubleshooting an IT outage, particularly an outage. We're going to talk about outages, right? IT issues can span from, a tier 3 ticket, typically called a P3. I'm using Cisco's jargon, but you have P3, and then P3 is typically not. There's no effect to there's no outage. There's no effect to end users that are using that IT system, but there is something that could potentially become a problem, or you're trying to implement something new, or there is one thing broken, maybe like one access point down out of 40 in a building, one access point down. That's probably a P3. That's not going to bring the wireless network to its knees. Those users that are closer to this, the users that are near the AP that's down, they might not have as fast a speed, but if you build a wireless network right, with some overlap, those users should be fine, So, first thing to ask when you start working on an outage is, when did this start? Okay, so that's a really important question. That's such an important question, because if you know when the problem started, that means that you can trace back, you can look at the logs. You need that for the logs, right? When did it start, right? When did you first see the problem? And there's going to be times when you're not going to get a concrete time frame. Some client might say, oh, it started at 12 o'clock. We think it started at 12 o'clock, but we didn't see the problem until 12:10 p.m. So you still are trying to establish, when you ask when did it start, you're trying to establish the time frame of when you can look back at logs. This is assuming that the problem has fixed itself, right? Sometimes problems fix themselves. Sometimes sometimes a network device will reload, a router will reload, and it'll come back up and it'll be fine. And you're like, why did it reload? Well, that's when you need to know. You need to know that time when it reloaded, right? And typically, if the router is configured properly, it'll have its clock set to NTP, and you could log in and look at the uptime. On a Cisco router, it's Chauffeur, right? Chauffeur will show you the uptime. So there's a lot of different things that can trip you up when you start troubleshooting in an outage. I think the most important thing also, okay, so number 1 is, when did the problem start? That establishes your timeline, okay? Number 2, once you get on the phone, with the client, you're doing a WebEx or something, you're going to get hit with a lot of information, right? You're going to hit with a lot of information, and you just need to realize that, okay, some of this information is good, some is not, right? So another important question to ask is let's see. The other one is how many users are being impacted by this. What is the outage? Who's it affecting? Right? This is going to gauge how. This really is the determinant of how you troubleshoot everything going forward. If this is a complete outage, let's say this is a company with 500 employees, all the phones are down, nobody can call in or out. That's going to really bring a company to its knees. Especially if it's a company that does a lot of phone stuff. A lot of talking on the phone. Like maybe, I don't know, a law firm or an insurance company or even a school district. If the phones are down in a school, that's not good at all. So that is a complete outage that requires getting it working immediately, and a complete 100% phone outage. That the IT department. I'm a contractor, right? So I help troubleshoot things for other companies. Those companies typically have their own in-house IT departments. Now that a complete phone outage, a complete outage of any kind is very difficult on the IT department at that company. You have to understand that as somebody that's troubleshooting for the client. They're in a state of emergency. Because listen, that's the thing with IT, right? There's really no safety net, right? If IT doesn't work, it just doesn't work, right? And it's if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and users are affected. There's no middle ground really. Oh, it's somewhat working. No, you can't. If it's not working 100%, and if there's bugs, then you can deal with bugs. You can deal with, you have to click it this way, or you have to click that program from the desktop. Don't click it from the start menu. Those are small things that I think most clients can deal with. But when the wireless is completely down in a building and people can't send emails, people can't do their WebEx meetings getting impacted, anything like that where, you're customer facing and, it looks embarrassing for the, for whoever is trying to set up a web meeting and the network's down. So you need to gauge that. If there's a complete outage, then you're working as fast as possible to find that problem. Number three would be, was there any changes? Okay, so this is a really big question. Were there any changes? What I mean by a change is I don't mean a piece of equipment breaking. Right, just like the router's dead, or the switch is dead, or the VMware server's dead. I don't mean that. That's not a change. That's something that goes wrong. That could be a hardware problem, could be a software problem. A change is usually a manual change, a change that a customer will make on their environment. Say pushing an update to some servers, and then suddenly the next day DHCP isn't working. Well, DHCP runs on that server, right? So you have to think deeper than that, right? Just when you start saying a problem doesn't work, like let's say computers aren't getting addresses, right? Computers aren't getting IPs. That's a common problem in networking. A machine not getting an IP. Oh, well, that's DHCP, right? Dynamic Host Control Protocol, right? You have the DHCP server that must respond to the client, and then you have everything in between, such as the network, that could impact that broadcast packet the client sends, and I believe it is broadcast, to the DHCP server to get an IP, and dupe IPs. If you have if you have a client on your network that's using the same IP as your default gateway, I've seen that before. That's a problem too, right? So you're trying to find out with that third question, has anything changed? You are trying to find out what manually changed. As I said before, was there an update pushed? Did somebody make a change on the network? Did somebody change a switch port from a trunk to access port? Did somebody change the SSID? Maybe change the password on the SSID? Did the provider bring down the circuit because they had some bogus order, right? We've all seen that before. We've all seen when your internet provider does something to your circuit and you're like, well, what did you do? So you're at that point trying to get, and it might not be a change that anybody there knows yet, right? just because it's a change doesn't mean that they're going to know about it. There could be something that that I don't know, Microsoft pushes, and it changes something, and you have to do that deep dive to find out what it is. Like, I think there was that change that Microsoft did recently where they made SHA-1. SHA-1's not valid anymore. So, there were certificate problems that I dealt with where it was Radius, and they were using a SHA-1 certificate as their root, and the Microsoft servers didn't like that. The Microsoft machines, endpoints didn't like that because of an update. And listen, I'm not a Microsoft guy, so I'm not saying that's 100% true, but I'm just saying that there could be a change that you don't realize yet. Okay, so then let's say everybody says, oh, there's no change. That's the point when then you really start digging into the devices, right? You got your time frame, right? You have the time frame when it happened. You start looking at things that could possibly impact the problem, right? If it's a DHCP problem, you can look at the core switch or the servers, right? If it's a wireless problem, authentication, you look at the Radius server, right? You have to know the technology, and it definitely helps to know the environment. But that's the other thing, right? Sometimes in IT, you will get thrown into an environment that you don't know. You don't know the environment at all, and you are just there to fix that problem, because that's how it is with, consulting companies, A consulting IT company will have multiple clients, and there might be somebody that's more familiar with that environment, but they're not available, right? But you got to get in there and you have to start to figure out the environment. And that's where, number 4, the fourth question is going to be, what does your environment look like? Where does the internet come in? If it's an internet problem, if it's an internet problem, right? If nobody can get to the internet, then you have to start somewhere, right? You can start with DNS, right? You have to start at the bottom and go up. So if the internet's not working, say, okay, DNS, right? DNS is easy enough to troubleshoot. That could be a server problem. That could be a network problem, right? That could be a host problem, right? You're going to try to say, okay, do a DNS lookup on Google.com. If it fails, right? If that fails, then what you can do is you can say, okay, can you get to your internal DNS servers? What's their IPs? Try to ping them, right? You try to ping those servers, they respond. Okay. Now the problem could still be that the internet doesn't work. What you can do is you can manually change the DNS on your host machine. Sometimes this is impossible because of group policy, right? But, usually a client will be able to do that. You change the DNS to Google and you try to do an NS lookup. And if it fails, then your internet's probably down. That's when you have to start looking at physical things. You say, if you got to get onto your layer 3, right? Your layer 3 is the most important thing. All right, so I'm starting to ramble here. But number 4 was, how's your environment looking? Okay. And then by the time you get to that 5th step, I don't know, it could be a half an hour into the call. It could be an hour into the call, right? People start to get on the same page. You start to figure things out. About an hour in is where you might even start to get vendors on the line. I don't think there's any shame in if you are troubleshooting a complete outage and if there is support for that product. I don't think there's any problem getting the vendor on the phone and opening up a ticket. The main goal of an IT outage is to fix the problem. Sometimes you have to put your pride aside. You say, oh, I can fix this without opening a ticket. No, just open the ticket. Just open the ticket. So reaching out to colleagues is always a great thing to do in an outage. You have to use all your resources, everything possible. And maybe I'll make another IT video, but I thought this really summed it up, and it was a little sloppy, but all right. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. The 5th one. I didn't say what the 5th was. The 5th one. The 5th one is, okay, let's fix it. No. At this point, it's time to fix the problem. At number 5, it's time to fix the problem. It's time to, you've learned when it started, you learned if there were any changes. You've learned the environment. You learned how many people are affected. Okay. the problem, you've learned the problem as you talked through all this. If you know that the internet's down or authentication doesn't work, and then you have to, at 5, you you start to look at the equipment that could be impacting that. It's like, as I said, DNS could be the servers, internet could be the firewall, it could be your DNS servers, it could be your layer 3. You have to start looking at things, and then when it started. You can start looking at logs to see when did it start, and you start using that time frame, right? And then in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, there's an outage, we have to find this fixed now. Or in the back of the mind, you're like, hey, the phones are down, but they're able to still call out because they're going out the POTS lines, which are backup. So if that feels a little better, because okay, we can look at this. It's not a complete 100% outage. People are affected, but they can still do their jobs, right? That's the thing with IT, right? It's a complete outage if people can't do their jobs, right? If people can still do their jobs, then it's maybe, 75%, 50% outage. People can still function in the day-to-day. So I just wanted to do a video on IT and troubleshooting. And all right, I will be back with more videos. Thanks, everybody. Bye.